welcome you into the Sporting Pod, along with Tony Allegretti and Mauricio Ruiz. I'm Cole Pepper. Coming up on the pod today, we are underway at the Olympics, what we've learned so far on the pitch from the U.S. men, and what we expect from the U.S. women's national team. We'll hear from Emma Hayes. As the Stateside Cup prepares to kick off in Jacksonville, we took an early look ahead to the Premier League, and we'll look forward to a big college soccer match in town next month. The Gators come to face UNF on August the 22nd. We are fed by the Bearded Pig, locally owned and operated, with locations in San Marco and Jax Beach. Make sure you swing by the Bearded Pig for some great barbecue and great times. Are you in the Olympic spirit, gentlemen?
Yes.
Just started.
Just getting.
I didn't think I had to be yesterday, but I guess I had to be.
You have to be today.
Yeah.
And I will let everybody know we're actually recording this before the U.S. women's national team plays on Thursday, before the opening ceremonies on Friday, which are supposed to be historic, down the River Seine, and following the U.S. Men's Olympic team losing 3-0 to France. Let's start with the women, though, and they will open against Zambia, as we mentioned, on Thursday at 3 o'clock. This is also a big opportunity for Emma Hayes. It's the first time that she's coaching the United States in a meaningful setting, coaching some friendlies before this. But here's what she had to say in advance of her Olympic debut as the head coach of the U.S.
We've been able to manage to complete all the things that we can do within our control. So I know we feel relaxed going into the game. Personally, for me, this is like such an honor. I've dreamed of this moment since I was a little girl. So to be leading the U.S. team out to our first Olympic Games together is something I don't think I can put into words, but I have a job to do. And so my focus is on making sure I prepared the team in the best way possible and keep my emotions in check. But I'm sure in, time beyond this, I will look back at this really fondly. I think the team is where the team is supposed to be. I don't focus any energy on the things I cannot control. The time I have had with the team, I feel satisfied that we have achieved what we have so far. For me, the important thing is that the team keep building the connections, keep building the relationships, keep building the confidence. And it's been a very, very good training week. And also having the July camp was great preparation.
All right, well, those are the words of Emma Hayes. I do think one of the things that stood out to me was her comments about controlling the things she can control. Tony, obviously that has a lot to do with the timing that she's had, the amount of time she's had, and the opportunities to work with this roster, which is limited, as it is for any team, even more so for a team with a new coach.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I honestly feel like the pressure is all on her and all on the States. Every time we play someone in this Olympics, they're gonna be the underdog. They've had a lot of time to prepare. They can do really kind of funky tactical things that could disrupt. And then if for whatever reason they lose composure or whatever, it could be tough. So I think that all that interview was pretty standard. It sounded like me leaving the office. I'm like, I think we put together a great team. But anyway, so I'm hopeful. I think they're really favorites in this, and she's a worldie as far as a coach, and so hoping for the best. But I do I wouldn't sleep on that first game either.
Well, absolutely. I think Zambia is a good opponent. It's not the most difficult opponent, but they're going to propose some problems. But I love Emma's composure. She can still feel the pressure, but can be composed at the same time. And she knows how to lead from the front. It's difficult to compare the pressure of an Olympics versus the pressure of coaching Chelsea. But she's done that, and she has continued to be successful on that front. And she always comes across as someone that has a lot of clarity. She just knows what her internal KPIs are as a coach and what she demands from her team, and everything around it is just good for people like us to talk about it.
There's no doubt there were some other comments she made in that mixed zone opportunity there in Marseille that I didn't clip out, but talking about playing in her style and her approach And while she could talk for hours and hours about what she believes in terms of tactics and approach, I'll spare you some of the time on that, maybe some other day. But she has these ideas that she's formed. I'm curious to see how much going from a club setting to coaching a national team is going to adapt her soccer philosophy. We've talked a lot in the past with Becky Burley about this, about how different it is with club and country. This is the first step. I think in the larger context of the larger goals, if you were to say, would you like to have a gold medal and a fourth-place finish at the World Cup in 2027, or a bronze medal and a World Cup championship? Pretty much everybody would take the bronze in the World Cup championship, right? I mean, if the U.S. doesn't get a medal out of this, it's going to be a disappointment, but it won't be as big a disappointment as not getting a strong finish in the World Cup in 2.5, 3 years. So I think keeping it in context, Tony, is probably important this time around, and yet we're still looking for gold.
Yeah, and and if you're a soccer fan and you get to go to Paris, I mean, what an amazing experience! And if they can pull it off, which people are kind of expecting, then that's a lot of fun. I think again, I think if they just keep their head, because I don't know that they did in the World Cup. It felt like the team unraveled a smidge.
Yep.
So. Be really interesting, and I do think that that the pressure is off whomever they're playing and on them. That's all I gotta say.
No doubt about it. On the men's side, the U.S. lost their opener to France 3-0. It was closer than the score would indicate. Jordi Mihailovic, the Jacksonville-born star, one of the three senior players on the squad, hit the crossbar. Paxton Aronson and John Tolkien both came close to equalizing. Now the U.S. has to look ahead to New Zealand and Guinea, both games you would think they could bounce back from. Again, it's U23s plus three senior players. So it's interesting to see how that sort of works with different countries in terms of who they bring in to play at this level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said of having watched the game, France were the better team. There's no doubt. But it wasn't a 3-0 game.
Yep.
It didn't feel like that. U.S. had a couple decent opportunities. I don't think they had a plethora of opportunities, but enough. When the game was 1-0, Token's back post header that hit the post. I mean, that's a goal, right? I mean, the XG on that has to be at as high as it can possibly be, because that's inside the 6-yard line with almost nobody in front of them. But this is kind of almost a different experience from Copa America, where you play your toughest opponent first, and now you have to create a sense of urgency against technically your less of opponents. New Zealand beat Guinea 2-0, so now New Zealand is up. Is that our next opponent?
That's it. Yep.
So that kind of creates a bit of an urgency against that game, where in Copa America we're like, oh, we took care of Bolivia. Let's walk into Panama and then let's punch people. And then let's figure it out. Let's depend on the Uruguay game, right? And
Not recommended.
Not recommended. So I think this, I think, and we said here early, and we're all guilty of this, or certainly I am. We're like, do you think playing Bolivia, Panama, and Uruguay is a good pattern? We're like, yeah, because you take care of your opponent and then you don't depend on the last game. I think we can all retrospectively and maturely, some of us are more mature than others, can accept.
He looked right at me.
I did. I looked at the wall.
Right at me.
I looked at the wall and the door. Yes. Maybe I was looking outside the room, but we can I can certainly accept that maybe this is get it out of the way. You were not favored in this game, 3-0, 1-0, whatever it is. Learn your lesson, and now really the tournament for the U.S. In the knockout stage here in the first round really starts against New Zealand.
They played decent. They looked pretty good. I felt like a couple of them were auditioning for their next coach, who might have been auditioning himself across the bench
Terry
there.
Henry, yeah.
So I thought the same thing. I thought it was a poor score line for a better game than it showed. Yeah,
we'll be following that in the coming weeks. We want to remind you that the Sporting Jacks Report debuts every Wednesday on WJXX, ABC 25, with encore presentations over the weekend. After Saturday's show at noon, we're going to be off for 2 weeks because of the Olympics, and then we will return on August the 14th, and we'll be in the 12:30 p.m. time slot right after noon news at ABC 25 on Wednesday, so that'll be a nice roll. And I can tell everybody, by the way, we've gotten really good response from this show. Not only just the content, but also the viewership continues to rise each and every week. So we appreciate everybody who's watching the Sporting Jacks Report. We, of course, share it on our YouTube channel as well. And we have more coverage on the Sporting Jacks Soccer Hour, Mondays at 6 on 1010 a.m. You can also listen on demand at 1010xl.com. And we cover just about everything we can in soccer, from the youth level all the way up to international competitions and the major big leagues around the world. So that is on the Sporting Jacks Soccer Hour. We do talk about the Premier League on that show, and we will here on this show as well. And a reminder that Saturday, it's Wolves and West Ham at Everbank Stadium. There are still tickets available. You can go to our website, sportingjacks.com, to see more information. And if you're listening to this on the way to the game and don't have your tickets yet, I think you'll be able to get them at the door. But order them, get them ahead of time if you possibly can. But I do want to talk about the Premier League because we're not too far off from the start of the Premier League season. And I want to get your expectations, both of you, on what you think the upcoming season will bring. Last season's top six: Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Aston Villa, Tottenham, and Chelsea. What are the chances, Tony, the same six are the top six this coming season in any particular order?
Probably not that bad. I mean, it's I don't see any of those really dropping mid-table. There might be some sleepers that kind of pop up. It seems like for the past few years, you'll see sort of Brighton advance, or even West Ham had a good run a couple years ago. But I feel like that's about right. I will say there's less activity in the window right now from those top six than normal, except for Aston Villa, who are picking up Everton players every now and then. Mark
it down, by the way, 12 minutes and 7 seconds.
Yeah,
and that's not big news.
No. Well, the fact that we have someone to sell is pretty big news. No, I don't think it's a stretch to think that might happen again.
Mauricio?
Yeah, the point you made, Tony, is kind of where I was going at. There hasn't, I don't know if it's because of the Euros, and there's a lot of shakeup that needs to happen of players, health-wise, physicals, and kind of things that happen after the Euros. A little bit of the young, the young players playing in the Olympics. Sometimes they kind of wait to see how some of these young prospects actually perform in the Olympics before they take a bite at them. But there hasn't been a whole lot of movement. I just think it's funny. You still have Newcastle, West Ham, as you mentioned, Man U, Chelsea reborn again for the fifth time in a row in every year. I actually do think there's going to be some shakeup.
I do too.
Yeah, I think there's been a little bit of. I think City, for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's due to some of the bans that were kind of alluded to, they've been a little passive. They're never passive. Every year, Pep he almost makes it a point that his team is never good enough, and he always does something, right? Whether there's one key position, one key player, even after they win, they bring someone or they let somebody go, and you always wonder what it's going to look like, because for him, it's always about refresh. He never wants to rest on his laurels, and that's something that's one of his philosophies. And there hasn't really been a whole lot of movement. So based on where we are today, how many weeks away are we? 3 weeks away?
3 weeks, yeah.
I actually think there's going to be some movement. Arsenal has done some small things, but more need-based rather than splash signings. They've been kind of filling depth chart in a way, which is kind of where I hurt them a little bit last year when they were leading from the front and they kind of got hurt again. I think there's going to be some shakeup, and I'd love to see the new era of Liverpool and kind of what that looks like as well.
I was going to bring that up. No Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. You would think that will have an impact. Listen, it doesn't. Even if the players remain the same, you change at the top, and there's going to be something that's going to be different. Could be better, could be worse, but Klopp had such a great run there at Liverpool. Aston Villa has, Tony, as you mentioned, have made some moves and have sort of, I don't know that they've established themselves in the big boy category yet, but they're starting to sit in there right now.
I think they are. I think with Emery, I think they're a contender for Europe every year now. I like them. Hey, do we have a contest today? Did we set one up?
No.
Well, let's do one on your outperform in the Prem this year, and so I'm going to take Everton. So they'll be how many spaces?
They'll move up.
They'll move up.
Okay.
And I would love to hear from our listeners who they think is somebody that will go up several slots up.
Are you giving something away here that, or are we just bragging rights?
Let's do a Sporting Jack's hat. You can pick. We have 3 models, and you can pick from the 3 that we have.
All right. For a Sporting Jack's hat,
and we don't have to wait until the end of the season to see if you're right. Just give us your pick, and we will talk about it at the end. But we'll randomly pick the winner.
You can send that, by the way, to contest@sportingjacks.com. All right, that's an interesting thought.
I just wanted to put you all on the spot.
Yeah, you totally did. Okay. So the 2 that jump out at me as a chance to move up would be Brighton, because they struggled. They fell to 11th, underperformed at the end, and were 11th in the table last year. The other is Nottingham Forest, who I think could make a move. They avoided relegation and seem to be getting some things,
you can only pick
structural.
One. You can only pick one.
All right, I'm going to go with Brighton to bounce back after a poor late performance of the season.
Safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go with Forest. That's kind of, based on the previous year, and they actually have done quite a bit in the offseason. And if you remember, they brought in Nuno, a new coach mid-year last year, so now he's got a little bit of an offseason to work on. He's had a good, healthy budget, so they've looked to improve on their roster.
I think Brentford could have been a good one too, because they had a kind of a lousy year last year, and Frank is good, and they haven't dealt Tony yet, have they? No, they still got Tony, so
that's probably going to be the
16th.
biggest move internally. What he does, because he did okay in the Euros, but just the fact that he's got international caps on him now, and if you think about the best less English forwards that you have in the Prem between Watkins and him, I think they're kind of it.
There's so few in my lifetime right now, people with just like nose for the goal. Where like every time they touch it, you think, oh my God, they're going to score. Tony's one of them. There's not that many right now.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
he's scary. He really is. Like, he's a player that when Brentford looks completely different with him on or off the field. Yeah. I mean, he's that good of a player where he makes that big of a difference because he's so good in the air, set pieces. Yeah, he's decisive.
All right, let's. I'm gonna hold off on having you give us an early pick on who you think is going to win. We'll do that later in the year. But which newly promoted team or teams will stay up this year? Leicester City, Leeds United, and Southampton all gained promotion last season.
Well, I'm kind of cynical on that because I think just like last year, it might be really yo-yo. It's tough. It's really tough to compete, and none of them that I've seen are really going nuts signing people. Maybe that TV money hadn't hit yet.
Right.
So I'm not really sure. The one that I would love to stay is Ipswich, because we know the owner, we know Brett, and that's also a USL championship owner in Rhode Island. That would be awesome. Good story. Ipswich is a really, it's almost a sort of Wrexham legacy of coming from where they've come. Not that far down, but pretty amazing.
Yeah, I said Leeds. Ipswich was the other one that came up. So Southampton, of course, has been up quite a bit. Leicester had the great run a few years ago, and of course had the tragedy there with the owner, and so the things have been a little uncertain. But how many of those?
Yeah,
three?
I think to me the one that stays is Leicester. I think Leicester, the way that they've built the organization currently right now, Leicester has the number one facilities, academy, training, first team training facility. They built a world-class training facility the year before they went down. Maybe that's where they put their money, and they didn't put the money on the field. A little bit of a Vardy kind of hangover still, but they got rid of a lot of players. I think Leicester is a team. I think they're an organization that are built to stay, and they had a bit of a hiccup last year, but they're built to stay. And I don't see Leicester going down anymore.
That's an interesting approach that. You can spend the money to try to stay up for a year, or you can spend the money to try to build so the next time you go up, you've got enough to stay up.
Well, because then you need to attract players, right? Like, if you're going to have enough money in the championship to compete at the top and then to go back up, as we've seen Fulham have done it, obviously Burnley this past year. But, yeah, you don't want to be that yo-yo team. When you come back up, you want to stay up. So there's always the argument: is the money on the field, which is never guaranteed, but you can argue that, or is the money in infrastructure? And they put money the last several years in infrastructure, especially after they won. They went really big on infrastructure because they got a lot of money, Champions League money.
All right, let's remind you that you can become a member of Sporting Jacks. It's absolutely free. Go to sportingjacks.com. You get discounts on Sporting Jacks official club merchandise, invitations to attend exclusive insider events, automatic chances to win special prizes and experiences, and you receive the Sporting Jacks monthly, or sometimes more than monthly, email newsletter. You can also place your season ticket deposit and receive first access to seats when you go to sportingjacks.com. Did want to point out a couple of things in the USL Super League that kicks off on August the 17th. 3 player signings that are different but all interesting this past week. Fort Lauderdale signed a 17-year-old defender, Reese Klein, who had committed to play at Clemson. She instead signs with Fort Lauderdale United. She was on the U16 women's youth national team. She played in the Pan Am Games for the U19 women's youth national team and was ranked the number 3 girls player in the state of Florida in high school. Lexington assigned Shay Moyer, who had been playing in the Top Flight Women's League in Turkey. She had played on the U20 women's national team in the 2016 Women's World Cup. Also, U14s, U15s, U18s, U19s with the U.S. youth. Played professionally in Iceland and Israel and collegiately at Penn State. And Spokane signed defender Sydney Cummings, who helped Celtic win the Scottish Women's Premier League Championship. She had originally been drafted out of college by Racing Louisville, also played for San Diego Wave in the NWSL. Most of her college career at Brown, and then after the pandemic, had another year of eligibility, played at Georgetown. So these are 3 very different backgrounds, but all, Tony, really interesting signings for the USL Super League as kickoff approaches.
Yeah, I keep getting impressed by the sort of breadth and the background and the experience of some of these players. It just reminded me, that Celtic signing reminds me, there's a woman from here who plays for Celtic, and this is just a note to myself to do a little research on that. But I love it. I can't wait. We're less than a month away. Few weeks now, and it's really going to be exciting, I think, to see that top level talent.
Yeah, I love. We keep seeing players come back home that have played internationally or attract international players that maybe had a stint inside the NWSL, but for whatever reason got phased out. But I love this Fort Lauderdale signing here with Reese Klein. Because it's becoming that cultural change in the women's game of signing young 17-year-old players that were supposed to go to college but decided to sign pro. And obviously it has to work out. It has to be the right environment for them, and hopefully that's the situation there for Lauderdale. But I think you saw that a little bit with NWSL, and you're starting to see now with USL. You've seen it in MLS before. The more leagues that are tactfully and intelligently signing these young players, that's when you really start seeing the change culturally in professional soccer in the U.S.
It's going to be very intriguing. I'm so looking forward to seeing how things play out and how the first year of the Super League looks on the pitch, as well as the way it's received off and how it's viewed around the world by other women's soccer players. Speaking of the women's game, on the college level, UNF will host Florida August the 22nd. By the way, the Ospreys open at Miami and at Florida State, so what a start to the season there. But we're looking forward to this. I think this is going to be a real rallying call for soccer fans in Jacksonville, Mauricio.
It is, and if you remember last year, they opened with Florida State here, which ended up being national champion, and it was just a good barometer to see where they're at. But when you start bringing in not just the big names programs, but the high level players, for Coach Eric Faulkner, it's great that he's not afraid of just trying to play a schedule that he can kind of walk through. But he wants to challenge his players, and he wants to put them in a situation where they can actually see where the line is, and then he can try to push them up to that line if they're not quite there yet. I'm sure he's got a handful of players that were recruited by Florida State, were recruited by Miami and Florida, and they decided to play here, maybe for the opportunity to stay closer to home. I do know that he focused a lot on local players. So when you bring games like that, you get a local crowd. And last year, we had close to 5,000 people. And it's a huge push for us now in the promotion of women's soccer to get as many people to that game as possible.
Don, I know you had something you wanted to close us out with.
Yeah. So I did a LinkedIn post about the upside of more professional soccer in your community, and basically illustrated that it creates more jobs. It's a much broader pathway to get to higher level. I pointed out that our women's team is going to be the top division, our men's team is the second division, and there was a little back and forth about just if that's possible or whatever. I think it's a foregone conclusion that we're going to have more professional soccer everywhere, not just here. And I love the fact that the Armada are working on a pro team. They're working on a stadium. That's going to be a huge asset for the community. More jobs, more pathways for kids. They have a close alliance with JFC. We have a ton of JFC friends and fans and season ticket depositors and all that. We're for it. And then I saw the interview with Mike Pickett, and I thought it was really strong about everyone needs to come together. And I just wanted to declare that we love everybody that puts their time in to put a team together, whether it's pro, amateur, whatever. We want to help support that, and we're behind that. And so we support the Armada, JFC, whomever it is. I think there's a good chance that there'll be another third division potentially pro team. Maybe it's on north of us, or maybe it's south, or whatever. I think we're going to have multiple options, and I think that's what, to grow the game in America, I think that's what we need. And I just felt like on if you go to my LinkedIn, I can't remember if it's Tony or Antonio, but you can kind of see that post and follow that. I'm going to continue to do research on where that's been successful, because I think it's important for America, and I think it's important for the sport.
Great. Loved it. If there's another team that comes to the east of us, let me know. That will be a surprise.
Yes.
But
offshore drilling FC.
Right. Yeah.
Could happen.
Could happen. Call Bruce Willis. We'll see how it all plays out. All right. Good stuff from Tony. Mauricio, thank you so much. And thank you for listening. We will be back with more, of course, next week. Be sure to share this podcast with your soccer fan friends. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we look forward to talking to you again next time, right here on The Sporting. What?
Eat more bearded pig.
There's the okay. Yes.
Right.
Got to get this. Got to get the oink in. Thank you, and we'll talk to you next time, right here on The Sporting Pod.
Cheers.